Welcome back, listeners, to the Silverlight Guide to the Cosmere. Joining us once again is the Sandbox, aka Trevor. He is on the road to recovery. The Edge Dancers decided he could heal on his own. That is why it's taking so long, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm. They keep pushing me. It's annoying.
Yeah, right up to the edge. Go check out his channel. There is no excuse whether you are podcasting. Well, there is an excuse. Do not do this while you're driving a car or operating heavy machinery. I'm going to move this because it's bothering me.
There should be a new book review out as you're seeing this on Gravity Falls, the Book of Bill. Short review, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, so I'm going to recommend it to everybody.
I'm going to watch it while I read the chapters to you. That's how that's going to work. I'm just kidding. But I can't wait to watch it. It doesn't work.
Any Sanderson news?
Yeah, we have Sanderson news. We have the fact that the World Hopper Ball has sold out. So for any of you hoping to get tickets to the ball, you might be able to occasionally. I think you can sign up. For those of you going to Dragonsteel, they will release signups for events at the end, probably sometime in October is what they've kind of said. No firm date, so you didn't hear it here first. But with those and with the World Hopper Ball, if tickets to those come open after they're all sold out, you can sign up to get email alerts. So do that. If you wanted to go, do that. They sold out with two of the sessions sold out within a minute, which is insane.
That was crazy.
And it seemed like they had opened up the tickets about 15 seconds before that 10 a.m. Mountain Time. So
it was like 3 or 4 seconds.
Yeah.
Maybe 10.
Yeah, maybe 10. Those of us waiting and ready, we got them. If you missed out, there will be more opportunities in the future for a ball, mainly at next year's Nexus. We have the most boring book ever is being shipped right now for those of you who pre-ordered. I got my shipping confirmation earlier today. Very excited. It looks very cute. We have the scheduling at a glance for Dragonsteel Nexus is up. Please go check that out for no reason other than to look at the writing horror panel, during which I will be the moderator. I do not know who else is on that panel. I expect that it is authors who have written horror.
Probably. That does seem like a good guess.
That's a good theory.
It's a good theory. And I'd be tickled pink if you joined us, or I guess I'd be scared out of my wits if you joined us. And sorry,
I'll attend just to freak you out.
Thank you. I am considering doing. Thank you. Thank you again. I am considering doing a giveaway for anybody who comes and attends that panel. I'm gonna see if I can work in a secret phrase, and the first person to email us that secret phrase wins something. But more details on that to come later. Do we have anything else?
Can the phrase be tickled pink?
It might be, but then you just gave it away, so it can't be that.
Did we want to talk about the PDF?
Unless it is, but then if it is...
The what?
Did we want to discuss the PDF of the deck building?
Oh yeah, they put out the rulebook for Mistborn deck building. That comes out November 6th. You can pre-order it October 1st. Some places you can already pre-order it. And and then before I pressed the record button, because listeners weren't able to listen at that point, Griff and Trevor were having a wonderful time absolutely slandering the crap out of the people who hosted events last year at Dragonsteel. I'm just kidding. No,
What?
they were generally pleased. However, as my hand needing something to fidget makes the screen shake, just imagine as listeners of the podcast, the screen is shaking.
Oh my god! It gave me a
stopped.
seizure.
Is that how that works, or am I going to make you nauseated?
Narcolepsy? I don't know.
Okay. For those of you who may have been uninspired by any other panel other than ours last year, I would like to let you know that I have access to a lot of people who are going to be panelists, and I've been seeing what they're going to be panelists on. And they have brought legitimate experts, literally PhDs, to talk about a lot of these things.
All right.
So they are also holding us to a standard of having outlines and communicating before the panel, so that we know what we're talking about and they know what we're talking about. So this year, get into as many panels as you can, but also stop by and visit our booth. We will be selling stickers.
Yes,
and
we will.
If you show us that if you subscribe to our channel, you will likely get a free prize that you will enjoy. So now that I've spent 6 minutes of your time talking your ear off, we're going to spend even more time talking your other ear off.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to be earless, Taylor's version.
You say earless and what?
Taylor's version? You know, fearless?
Oh my god. He must be stopped.
That's appropriate. Well, so is mouth shut.
Yeah.
That's good.
Great. Okay, so we're gonna do this the same way we did. I already read chapter 14, but for you listeners, I'm gonna time travel and cut it into right now, and then we're gonna discuss it. So, Day 2: Dalinar, Yasna, Navani, Fen, Yanagon, Adolin, Shallan, Zeth, Sigzil, Kaladin, Lift, Renarin, Relaine, Lopin. Chapter 14: Not Asleep. As I approached the first crossroads, I met a family seeking a new life. From The Way of Kings, 4th Parable. Dalinar was not asleep. He stood on his balcony, gazing out at the night, feeling alone. He was never truly alone these days, not with the Stormfather increasingly present in the back of his mind. Still, the sensation persisted. Dalinar. Alone. Against a god. He had 8 days to find a way to defeat Odium. When younger, Gavilar had stood like this, surveying a battlefield, planning, while Dalinar had just blundered from fight to fight, stomping on toes and breaking down fences. How much better would all of this have gone if Dalinar had died in his brother's place that fateful night? Perhaps this war would already have been won. But Gavilar was dead. So Dalinar surveyed the cold highlands, trying to see better than he had in the past. Finally, he shook his head and walked into his chambers. At least this place was starting to feel like home. Navani knew he detested clutter and had begun expertly arranging the room to match both her desire for decoration and his preference for austerity. The result was homey, bedecked with items like his grandfather's Takama, which hung on the wall between two banners, cloth belt wrapped around it. Twice. He felt as tense as a bowstring. A subconscious portion of his mind could tell when a battle was shifting out of his control, when a line was close to breaking or a formation about to be flanked. He felt it today, like a straining leather strap on the verge of snapping. So when the knock came at his door, frantic, fast, urgent, he knew. The storm was here. He reached the door as Babylon, one of the door guards, was checking it. A Windrunner squire stood outside, eyes wide, stormlight streaming from her. "What has happened?" he said. Yasna was not asleep. Partly it was this stupid bed. Wit adored plushness. He wanted a mattress that would swallow a person and had found hers to be unsuitably stiff. Yasna liked trying new things. This relationship itself was, in a way, such an experiment. She had enjoyed it for many reasons. The scheming together, the sharing of incredible plans, the chance to connect with someone so intellectually stimulating. Relationships were about compromise, she had read, and so she'd procured a new bed. And she hated it. She swam in stuffing, irritation spread, like pink motes almost invisible in the night, bobbing around her as she listened to Wit breathing. He didn't snore, but he did occasionally whistle. She turned to the other side, which, since they both tended to sink toward the center of this awful mattress, should have jostled him. He just lay on his back, whistling softly as he exhaled. Was he actually asleep? He'd hinted that he visited other places at night, other worlds, engaging in political machinations at which she could still only guess. Yes, there had been wonderful things about the relationship. So many others, however, were like this bed. "You lie to me sometimes," she whispered, facing him in the darkness. "You realize that means it can't be a true relationship? I can trust someone who has secrets, but not someone who lies." If he was aware, he didn't say anything, though design, on the wall behind him, pulsed and rotated. So far, Yasna had caught him in only the most minor of lies. He'd engage in wordplay with her, or toy with puns, and she'd ask him to stop. He'd promise, and would appear to have followed through. But then she'd noticed that the games hadn't ceased. They'd merely grown more subtle. Wit taking the wordplay to a more esoteric layer, difficult to spot. He seemed to think it would engage her, push her. Instead, it signaled something else. Wit would do what he thought was best for a person, not what they wanted. Despite her efforts, she knew she wasn't connecting to him physically as he'd like. Even during sex, she felt distant, perhaps the most distant she ever felt. That made him anxious, as if he were doing something wrong. He thought if he tried harder, he'd do something mind-blowing and change how she felt. In turn, he wasn't connecting with her on an emotional level, as she wanted. If only he'd be upfront with her. She turned over again. A stiff pillow did little to counteract the strange stuffing, which was made of baby chicken feathers. Or perhaps the smallest feathers of adult chickens? She hadn't been able to parse Wit's description, but either way, a good Lavis husk mattress was far superior, shredded to remove the awkward lumps. She had ordered another new mattress to put in the next room. She valued the experiment of trying it his way, but she would not continue in discomfort simply to please him. A relationship required sacrifice by all parties, but it should not be built on a foundation of sacrifice. And storms. This was why it was best to avoid such entanglements. 8 days until Dalinar confronted Odium, and she was worrying about a relationship. Perhaps it was a way to distract her, because despite all of her training, all of her learning, all of her preparation, The final decision was going to come down to someone else. Dalinar would face Odium's champion himself. She did not dispute his choice. He was a bondsmith and a fierce warrior. He'd had dealings with Odium, and perhaps understood the creature better than any mortal. Yasna had written out the reasons he was the best choice. Yet, could it have been her? What if, instead of hiding her powers, she'd told people what she could do and what she feared? Her life and Dalinar's seemed very different. He'd burned a city, and people forgave him. He'd proclaimed the Almighty to be dead, and half the Ardents had joined him. Yet when Yasna was honest about her atheism, her thoughts on government, or her displeasure with traditions like the safe hand, well, condemnation and judgment had chased her like twin headsmen, each looking to get a whipping in before the execution. When Yasna Kholin spoke her mind, people hated her. Perhaps she'd learned the wrong lessons from that, but could she be blamed? She curled up, listening to the quiet sounds of Urithiru. Water moving through pipes of its own accord, air whispering as it was pumped through vents, trembling there. She at last realized why she hated this mattress so much. It reminded her of the soft restraints they'd given her when she'd been young. When those who loved her had locked her away for a few terrible months that basically everyone else had forgotten about. Everyone but Yasna, who would never forget. Wit suddenly sat up in bed. "Oh, hell!" he whispered. Yasna came alert, forming ivory as a blade, a short, sturdy dagger, and warning her armor-spren to be ready. She reached to the covered bowl of spheres beside the bed, but did not remove the black shroud or draw in stormlight. Light rising from her skin would make her a target in the darkness. Wit sat there, barely visible by the dim light that escaped the bowl through the shroud. He wore silken nightclothes, though his hair, as always, was immaculate, despite his having slept on it. How? "What?" she hissed at him. "Oh, bollocks!" he whispered, and leaped from the bed, shock sprint erupting all around, design scurrying down the wall and across the floor toward him. The darkest, hairiest, greasiest bollocks on the most unkempt nethers of the most wanton demon of the most obscure religion's damnable hellscape. "Wit?" Yasna said as he rushed to the counter. "Wit!" He looked to her, wild-eyed. Then he pulled the shroud off some spheres and washed the room in light. She blinked, dismissing her blade. If Wit wasn't worried about blinding them, then this wasn't a physical danger. It might just be another of his strange rants. Except for the way he looked at her, eyes like glowing spheres, lips drawn without even a hint of a smile, jaw taut, hands clenched, breathing quickly. Genuine panic. "Wit," she said, "please, what's wrong?" "Give me a moment," he mumbled, turning back to the counter covered in documents. I need a moment." He extracted a notebook and began writing. She stood, and though the air was warm, thanks to her mother's transformations, she felt cold in only her nightgown. She threw on a robe, then leaned over Wit's shoulder. The symbols he wrote were unfamiliar, one of the many languages he could speak from worlds beyond hers. It appeared that he was making a table, though, and those notations at the left of each row, the dots and lines, numbers? They repeated far more often than the other symbols did. He wrote furiously, his handwriting growing sloppy, and he'd pulled out some of the strange color-changing sand he used when experimenting. His expression grew more intense. The doors began to shake. Yasna had a sword in hand a second later, but then realized it was him. No one was on the other side. He was exerting some kind of pressure that made the doors vibrate. The rings in her jewelry box began to spill out onto the floor, while her shoes scooted away, pushed by their buckles. Every bit of metal in the room, save for her shard blade, reacted to him. including her fabrial alarms, which went haywire, flashing rapidly. Then the sand burst alight with a mother-of-pearl iridescence and hovered above the table. Wit's silky nightclothes began to writhe and contort as if alive. His motions became increasingly frantic, fear spread bubbling up through the ground around them. Then, in a flash, his body shape physically changing, molded like wax, he became another person, shorter, with stark white hair and subtly different features. This is the real him, she realized, a man not from their world who masqueraded as Wit. But his change had been physical, not an illusion. He turned to her, pencil snapping under the pressure from his fingers. "I've been tricked," he said. How? She asked. The sand turned black and sprayed back down onto the counter. Wit's shape reverted to his familiar self in seconds, and the room quieted, as if at an order from him, save for her fabrial alarm strobing the room white and red. He stood, again taller than she was, and held up what he'd written. "I'm missing," Wit said, 3 minutes and 27 seconds. "I'm not following," she said. "Forgive me, Wit. I'm trying to parse this, but... Storms, what is happening?" I'm sorry," he said, slumping into the seat beside her stone counter, a natural feature of the room that jutted from the wall. "I have lived a very long time, Yasna, longer than a mortal mind can track, so I store memories in something called breath, an easily accessible, if costly, form of investiture a person can adopt and, with training, use to expand their soul. I periodically review my memories, deciding what can be jettisoned. In my review just now, I found something unexpected, something terrifying." 3 minutes and 27 seconds? She whispered, interrogating the notes on his page, as if by force of will she could decipher them. "Missing? When?" "A bit over a day ago," he said. "And what were you doing at the time?" He let out a long breath, then met her eyes. "I was having a chat with Odium." "A chat?" she said, her heart trembling. "With the most ancient enemy of humankind? The being that seeks to destroy us? To crush my family? To weaponize all of Roshar for his own ends? A chat?" "We have a history," Wit explained, "as I believe I've told you." Yasna turned off her alarms, then pulled a chair over and sank down, feeling sick to her stomach. "I asked you, Wit," she whispered. "I asked you to involve me in any dealings you had with him." "I'm telling you now, Yasna," he said. "That is, technically, involving you." She held his eyes and knew. There would never be a place for her inside his deepest self, would there? She'd always be on the outside, maintained as part of his collection, enjoyed, perhaps even loved, but never confided in. She had to withdraw for her own sake. Anxiety spread, like twisting black crosses, vanished as she tucked away feelings of betrayal. She had known what she was getting into with him. One did not court an immortal lightly. "What were you saying to Odium?" she asked. He shrugged. "I had to gloat a little. It was requisite, considering our history." His eyes became distant. "I remember feeling odd about the encounter. A sense of repetition. Something happened in those last minutes. He got the better of me, then excised the memory from my mind, letting me believe I'd won the exchange. Now that I look, I can find the remnants. It was hurriedly done." "This is wrong, isn't it?" she said. "Fantastically wrong. Reyes is a megalomaniac, Yasna. For all his craftiness, it would hurt him to let me walk away thinking I'd bested him. Yet this time he encouraged it. Wit leaned forward and took her hand. He's grown. After 10,000 years, Reyes has actually learned something. That terrifies me, because if I can't anticipate what he will do, then what? We have to reread the agreement between him and Dalinar, Wit said. Now. Yasna had a copy. After Dalinar and Odium had agreed upon the terms, the sibling had been able to quote for them the exact wording. They indicated that an agreement between gods wasn't quite a contract, but it could be written out as one. Wit started to scan it. Wit? She said, feeling genuinely unnerved. Odium said he would keep to the spirit of the agreement, not exploiting loopholes. You confirmed this was indeed how it would work? So I thought, Wit murmured, still reading. I also thought I knew Reyes. Everything is uncertain. A pounding sounded at the entry to her rooms. She pressed her hand on the wall and asked the sibling to turn on the lights, then passed out of the bedroom, through the sitting room to the door. She rapped out a pattern and heard the proper knock in return, then eased open the door to reveal Hendant of the Cobalt Guard, a man with discretion to match his general poise. She trusted him as much as she trusted any, so wasn't bothered when he saw Wit leave the bedroom. What? She said to Hendant. Radiant Shallan and Hybrid's Adolin have returned, Your Majesty, he said in a low voice. Armies are moving through Shadesmar toward Azamir, and they report the Oathgate will let them through. Armies are moving through Shadesmere toward Azamir, and they report the Oathgate will let them through. Your uncle has called for a meeting at First Bell. I'll be there, she said, then closed the door and looked back across the sitting room toward Wit. An invasion force closing on Azamir. She and Dalinar had both anticipated there would be attacks right up until the deadline, but they'd expected border skirmishes. After all, what kind of major offensive could be mobilized and executed in just 10 days? I knew the loss of cultivation's perpendicularity was going to bite us, Wit said. We should have fought for it. We didn't have the resources to hold the seas of Shadesmar, Yasna said. We can defend against this assault. Assuming there aren't more such assaults coming, Wit said, which seems a dangerous assumption. Something about this feels wrong. So very, very wrong. What else have I missed? If you have missed something, will you perhaps miss it again as you study? You're right, he said. He took a deep breath. You're right. We need an expert beyond even my considerable knowledge. Do you know of any? Do you know any? On your world? He asked. Only one, but she and I aren't on speaking terms. I will instead see if I can contact an old friend. Navani was not asleep. She climbed through the bowels of Urithiru, exploring an ancient tunnel that, until her bonding of the sibling, had been inaccessible. Lifespren bounced around her, small, glowing green motes. Each one that arrived at the tower, called by the sudden transformation, first found Navani and spun around her for a few hours before making its way to the fields. She'd tried sleeping. It hadn't worked, so she'd succumbed to her longing to explore. This tunnel ultimately led to a large chamber with a wall of fabrials, hundreds of glowing gemstones in wire housings emerging from the stone like rock buds. She'd been led here, as she could feel the workings of the tower. 1,000 different fabrials pulsed in her mind up and down the structure, attractors drawing water to pumps deep below, delivering it to thousands of different faucets across the enormous building. Heating fabrials to warm the air, and these on the wall, they drew in air and pushed it through Urithiru, ventilating the entire city. How much could she learn from this? What marvels could she build with such knowledge? She closed her eyes, sensing the fabrials in the wall more acutely now that she was near. Their air was like the breath in her lungs, the water the pulse of her veins. Any time she paused, she felt it, and a host of other interactions. Lights glowing from within stone, the lifts in near constant motion, the powerful strength of tower light infusing all radiance who entered. With that, she hoped her home, now an extension of her very self, would be safe from any further attacks by the enemy. It should be, the sibling said in her mind. They rarely dared infiltrate me before. My light not only knocks fused unconscious, it makes the radiance here virtually invincible. We need to learn how to send that light with them, Navani thought back, trailing through the room, resting her fingers on each fabriole she could reach. Spren of a half-dozen varieties followed like a cloak made of light. It cannot be done, the sibling said. Humans cannot hold my light. They are too full of holes. In talking to Dalinar earlier, she'd learned that a radiant leaving would lose tower light almost immediately. If a person carried it in a gemstone, the light escaped faster than Stormlight did. Tower light was a gift, but solely in Urithiru. But while they were here, it was omnipresent. Like the rhythms she now felt through her bond, she closed her eyes, letting herself experience it all. Pulses from the planet, the mechanics of the tower, the spren singing to the sibling. She found such incredible awareness impossible to ignore. So no, she didn't sleep. She hadn't in 2 days and didn't feel tired or draw a single exhaustion spren. Would you like me to quiet the noise? The sibling asked. Perhaps, Navani replied. I will need to sleep eventually. No, the sibling said. You're part of me, and I am part of you. The tower doesn't need sleep. You will not either. No sleep? She should have asked, but there was so much to learn. She discovered only yesterday that she couldn't leave the tower for any extended period of time, or it would weaken the bond. A few weeks at most was all she could risk. She tried not to feel inhibited by that. She had great gifts, and the trade-off was a reasonable one. Plus, how much could she get done with the extra hours not spent asleep? She opened her eyes and tipped her head back, looking up some 30 feet at the wall dappled with gemstones and filigree. It was all so wonderfully overwhelming. Not just the bond to the tower, but her emotional journey, acknowledging her self-worth, becoming a radiant when she'd been certain it would not be her lot. A solitary keenspren, like a marvelous, three-dimensional gradient of color, appeared above her. She gasped. It was the first she'd ever seen. They are afraid, the sibling said, of being captured, so they do not often come to humans. One thing still divided Navani and the sibling, who disapproved of modern fabrials. The spren worried Navani would take what she learned and create more abominations. Modern fabrials required trapping spren against their wishes. The archaic versions, like the ones that ran the tower, used willing spren, but were inefficient in so many ways. And storms. There was so much to learn, so much to do. She barely knew where to start. Perhaps she could discuss it with Dalinar? Hopefully he was asleep by now. He's opening the door to your rooms, the sibling said. Would you like to listen to what he's saying? We need to talk about you spying on everyone in the tower, Navani replied. Why? It's not right. People need privacy. They're inside me, Navani. They can't expect privacy when they crawl inside someone. I don't hear it all anyway, only what I pay attention to. Still, Navani replied, it seems... Navani! Navani! She froze in place, hand on a fabrial, life spren swirling around her as they sensed her mood. What? You really need to hear what this Windrunner is saying. Queen Fen was not asleep. She blamed the prince consort. Here, they'd come to the royal yacht because he longed for the sound of the deck creaking to serenade the swaying beat of waves on the hull. They sometimes came down to the ship, even docked as it was, for a few nights, a getaway that didn't involve much getting away, as she had business to be about. But they weren't in the yacht's royal suite. They were below decks, in the midshipmen's quarters, stuffed into a hammock. She didn't complain. She was the one who had married a sailor. Plus, this was cozy and warm, but still. "Aren't we," she said, swaying in the dark room, "a little old for this, Gemheart?" "I'll take it up with the council, love," he replied, his whiskers sharp on her skin. "The queen would like advice from her most brilliant of advisors. Is she too old for quality time with her husband? Perhaps she is too distinguished for an occasional tumble in the surf." "I wasn't talking about that," she replied. "Just the part where we snuck away from the guards and found a hammock. You're almost 70, you know." "Which makes you?" "Almost 70. "Pretty young," he said, "by some of my accountings." "By what kind of accounting is 70 young?" "Almost 70. And?" "And the average age of your merchant council must be somewhere in the 80s, Kamako replied. "So by that comparison, we're basically a new schooner. Now stop distracting me from distracting you." She sighed, but relaxed into the swaying hammock, the rough canvas rubbing her bare skin. Waves rocked the ship, and her cares fled before warm perfection, until a brilliant white light lit the cabin. Damnation! She sat up, as did Kamako on the other side of the hammock. Both of them glared at the young lieutenant standing on the ladder up, holding a diamond sphere lantern. His eyes locked on Fen, bare in the hammock, and he dropped the lantern in shock. It broke open, spilling diamonds in a cascade of glittering light. "Bother," Kamako said. "I thought they knew not to look for us. I specifically left hints." Sorry, the lieutenant said, scrambling down the ladder, shame spread all around as he started snatching up the diamonds. "Sorry, I didn't see. I'm sorry I saw, Your Majesty. Ah!" "It's fine," she said, leaning back. "You know, the queens of history were sometimes painted with one breast bare." "Never did understand that," Kamako said. "Some nonsense about suckling a nation," Fen replied. "As if these old things would offer more than sawdust." The lieutenant continued to scramble for diamonds, though if he'd had half a brain, he would have simply left. "It truly is our fault for sneaking off," Kamako said. "Can't believe you let me talk you into it, Fen. I thought you were more responsible." She rolled her eyes, then pulled a glove onto her safe hand. "Look," she said, wiggling the fingers. "There. Does that help, Lieutenant?" "No," the young man said in a shrill voice. "It really, really doesn't." She grinned at Kamako, feeling a wicked delight at the young officer's discomfort. Served him right. Though they pretended to be sneaky, the entire ship knew to turn a blind eye, letting them imagine they were being scandalous. "Oh, let the lad off, Fen," Kamako said. "Get on with you, boy," Fen said. "We'll deal with the spilled spheres. You pretend you weren't here, and so will we. Out. Shoo." The youth stood up, his white eyebrows stiffened in the naval fashion. He squeezed his eyes closed and saluted. "Your Majesty, Prince Consort, I've been sent to locate you. News from Yurethiru. Enemy armies are poised to invade Azir." "What?" Fen said, coming alert. She reached for her clothing on the floor, nearby, nearly dumping the two of them out on their bare backsides. "Why didn't you say something?" Sorry. He saluted again, his eyes still closed. I thought they already invaded Azir, Kamako said. "That was Imul," she replied. "It's impossible they'd reach Azir by the deadline. We have the bulk of our armies in the way. They're coming through Shadesmar, the lieutenant said. Does the Thalian council know, lad? Kamakal asked. They're being roused. Aye. He cut off and stumbled back as someone else slid down the ladder. It was a storming admiral. Flatteren, to be precise, a man with gray hair like storm clouds and spiked eyebrows. He took in her state of undress and didn't miss a beat. Your Majesty, this is urgent. This news about Cosmere is that bad? Fen said, dressing rapidly. If Flatteren had come in person. No, not that, Flatteren said. This is something new. Fen froze, a pit forming in the depths of her stomach, anticipation spread rising through the floorboards in the shape of streamers. Perhaps it was a lifetime of always expecting the worst, but she somehow knew what he was going to say. A second offensive, she guessed. Yes, Your Majesty, he said. Our blockade of Yarkaved has been breached. We just got word. The Veden blockade? Kamako said. We were supposed to have that well secured, barring heavy air support, Fen said, closing her eyes. Heavenly ones? No, Your Majesty, the Admiral said. Skybreakers. The entire force of them. Hundreds. They drove back the Windrunners posted to protect our ships, then sank half the fleet. The other half of our armada scattered, but now an assault force is heading straight for Thalen City. She tried to contain her anxiety. They had assumed the enemy would squabble over borders, but it appeared he had planned something grander, a play for the hearts of the Coalition's capitals. Storms, Kamako whispered. Let's get moving, she said, opening her eyes and throwing his trousers to him. Our city is in danger, and with the blockade broken, we can't stop an assault. It's time to see how much this coalition is willing to provide in support. Yonagon I, Prime Akasix, Emperor of all Makabak, was sleeping. He had to be sleeping, because the schedule said he was to be asleep, and he kept to the schedule. It was basically the sole thing required of him. Follow the outline, provide a model of stability for an empire. The Emperor did not lie awake, staring at his ceiling. The Emperor understood that by sheer force of will he could bring peace and harmony to his people. So, by force of will, the Emperor could obviously make himself fall asleep. So he was sleeping. Right then. He had to be. Therefore, all the thoughts that crowded his mind, well, they were the thoughts of a man dreaming. He did not toss or turn. That would be interpreted as nervousness by the 10 blessed citizens who had been granted the privilege of maintaining his bedside vigil, a great honor, tonight bestowed upon women who had worked diligently to feed their armies fighting near Emul. It happened all night, every night. Every hour, 10 new people would come bask in the imperial presence. Not Yonagon's presence. It wasn't a man who blessed this nation, but the office itself. Yonagon was basically like the rack that held up his clothing, kept to his shape so those passing outside could see it and be inspired. How he wished he could do more than stand and be seen. It was good he was asleep, because those thoughts were unseemly. Yonagon was specifically not a man like Dalinar Kholin, who made decisions, then acted. A man who had charged into battle with plate and blade, forging a nation. That kind of man was dangerous. Except, while dreaming, Yonagon wished he were dangerous. On paper, he owned every shard in the greater empire. In reality, many were owned by other kingdoms, and though they paid lip service to the imperial seat of Aesir, they would never consider delivering up their artifacts. He'd be a fool to expose imperial impotence by making such a demand. Aesir also owned shards, carried by distinguished soldiers with an imperial grant of rights. They could offer aid to the great merchants and houses of Aesir in exchange for money, much of which went to the crown. Most of their work was civil, cutting new trenches and the like. Those who wielded them were loyal, and it was a respected position. Demanding they return their shards would be a great dishonor to them. Plus, it would involve quite a bit of paperwork. Even if they did return the shards, Yonagon couldn't wield them. He was too important. He was needed, not to administer the kingdom. That wasn't his job. as tons of codes of law made explicit. His job was to lie in bed, sleeping, while his mind ran on at length, watched over by praying citizens. Yezir, God above, in the halls pristine, he thought, is this really all you want of me? He would never want to return to his days as a thief with his uncle. He'd hated that life. Living each day for the next heist? Upending the order of the nation, a parasite feeding off those doing hard work? No, he didn't want that. But the more he learned, the bigger he realized the world was, and how little lying in a bed staring at his own eyelids could accomplish. So he was excited when someone broke protocol. Guards arrived at the door, whispering apologies to the honored guests who had fed armies. Bowing to them, as today they were among the greatest in the empire. Then deeper bows to him. Yanagon opened his eyes and sat up calmly. The cooks whispered, eyes wide. He took in the 5 guards, pleased to remember each of their names, though he'd never speak to them directly. To do so would make them uncomfortable. Instead, he looked past them to where Nora knelt. Head vizier of his court, scholar, strategist, teacher. Whatever had happened was important indeed. Without a word, he slipped from his bed and held his hands to the sides so he could be dressed. The Emperor was awake. The end of chapter 14.
Wow!
Ta-da!
Welcome back. Shalom. Shalom.
Oh my
Shalom.
god.
Delicious life.
Shalom. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is that Sanderson has made quite a dirty joke that none of us are aware of. And sorry, I keep playing with things. I'm going to switch to something that's not going to hit my screen.
What is this dirty joke?
So y'all remember the chapter where Syl said that she has a troll head down there?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right? It's hard to forget.
Uh-huh.
So it's either late Way of Kings or early Word of Radiance. Bridge 4 is talking about how gross it is that the Lopin and the Rock like to eat Shoalhead. So...
Whoa.
Yep.
This one's been rather saucy.
These chapters... So there's a reason I'm saying that. You just heard it. You just heard it, y'all. I believe for the first time, Sanderson has ever said the word sex in one of his chapters. Ever.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. And it's perfectly acceptable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And as we're about, for those of you who read it, and for those of you about to listen to it, the next chapter is also quite spicy. It's pretty much as spicy as Brandon gets.
Pretty much, yeah, actually.
And I want to harken back to the fact that these chapters, this kind of content, is the interstitial fluid that makes the story build emotionally. Like, without these, it would just be straight action, which, yeah, I'm sure a lot of us would be fine with, but this is showing us different sides to the characters that we don't see. So I know some people have a problem with it. There's one person that keeps commenting on our YouTube channel that they have a problem with it, and I think they stopped watching.
Slow?
No, that it was risque. It was more risque than like any other Sanderson book. Yeah, it was very strange.
I mean, okay,
right.
Here's the thing. I understand if people feel that way. I don't. I mean, like, personally, I don't understand. I have zero issue with it whatsoever. But I can conceptually understand if somebody has an issue with it. But why do you keep telling us about that?
I know.
I think they're just venting, which is fine.
They're venting.
Which is fine, I guess.
They're giving their reason for why they're dropping out, and that's fine, but also nobody cares. I'm sorry. Like, read it or don't.
Here's the thing. Sexuality, presented appropriately, which I think Sanderson is doing, is part of the human condition, as it were. And ignoring that or trying to excise it completely from your works and pretend it doesn't exist is just as much a problem as excising any emotion and pretending your characters don't feel it.
Yeah. Completely agree.
I don't think it's Sanderson trying to play into the not newer tropes, but romantasy has been growing over the past few years. There's just always current trends in fantasy or just in literature in general. And I think it's Sanderson's not trying to buy into that trend, but just remind people that, hey, you can still talk about these things without doing that in full. Like you don't need to have like if you've read the Greenbone saga, there's a sex scene early on in what's the first one? Jade City.
Okay.
It came out of nowhere for me, and I'm like, whoa, this is spicy. And like I've never read something like that before, but you just push through it and continue on. But Sanderson's kind of showing like, hey, you can reference this stuff and you don't need to like show it.
Yeah.
But it is a part of the human condition, like Griff is saying.
Definitely. I personally don't like super enjoy it. I think Fading to Black is nice. I think what Sanderson has done here is really nice. Mm-hmm. Like it doesn't need to be explicit, but it does show like a part of love between characters or lack thereof that can't be shown other ways. Like some of this is very intimate. Some of it is very character defining, especially with Yasna. So
it makes the characters more real too. Like the more parts of their life that you show, the more that you can relate to these characters, the more real they're going to feel.
Absolutely.
Which makes it hurt more when they die.
Yeah.
True. Very true.
And I think also there is probably, I expect, and I am assuming here, so take this with a massive pinch of salt, like giant.
So this is confirmed. This is going to happen. Okay.
No, this is not a theory in the books. I'm just thinking that like Sanderson was likely very hesitant to put anything like this in the books, and when he started to, or especially with that romantasy trend, like you were saying, like he realized readers aren't going to be put off by it. If they don't like it, they'll just kind of gloss over it. So I expect he's probably going that way, and he's realizing.
I think it felt right for him at the moment, and he just couldn't find a reason to cut it.
Yep, I agree. So but we do have a lot to talk about for this chapter that is not the sexy stuff. So we have.
Do you have an aw button? Aw.
We need to put
that
in.
Was technically that was an aw.
No, you need like a sad one, like aw. Oh bother. That Alex, we need to talk about. we need to talk about emotions. Okay, go watch Inside Out.
Can we just have an intro to the donkey song to indicate sexy stuff, sexy times?
What?
I'll play it for you later. Don't worry about it.
I've learned that Griff has like the most obscure references, but every time I look into them, they're like super popular, and I'm the one that's missing out. What was it last week he gave us?
The girl boss, the gatekeep, gaslighting girl boss.
Yeah. I never heard of it, and I look it up, like, oh my god, this is a super popular meme, and it fits perfectly to what we were talking about. But I think we did it off camera.
Hilarious.
Yeah. Okay, so what's this chapter called again?
This chapter is called Not Asleep. And not really asleep. What we get is a bunch of that's not the right chapter. That's the interludes from last week.
How dare you?
So what we really get is each of the leaders of the coalition nations, plus Navani, because she's queen of Urithiru, right? So Dalinar and Navani of Urithiru, Yasna of Alethkar, Fen of Thaylen City, and Yanagon of Azamir. They all get a part in this chapter, as you just heard. They're all not asleep right when they learn about the big attacks coming towards them.
Yep.
There isn't a lot revealed for Dalinar, Fen, and Yanagon. Yanagon's is definitely put in there for comedic relief, which I thought was brilliant. It was really well done. It was just an entire section on the satirizing bureaucracy which Azamir is, right? Azamir is a satire on bureaucracy. We got to see more of that. Fen was thrown in there also for comedic relief, but also because we theorized after we saw the ships in Shadesmar that there would be more attacks happening.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, the Skybreakers were like, we must attack the island. Cool. So I thought Fen and Kamakel's little rousing bits on the ship was hilarious with the soldier that comes in to get them. Reading that in French, trying to do my best French accent, brilliant. I really enjoyed it. Nothing super new there, other than it set up the promise. The promise is Fen is going to try to get as much help from Dalinar and the Coalition as possible, which is a common sense thing, but it is an explicit statement of the last line is, let's see how much this Coalition is willing to help us. Makes perfect sense. Now, with Yasna and Navani, we get two different sides of the coin, of the investiture coin, right? Navani, we don't get a lot of revelation. We just see specifically about her bond with the tower, and we get more information about Tower Light, which Tower Light only infuses radiance while they're at the tower. Essentially, it's lost very quickly because humans have holes in them, whatever that means, sibling, which sounds like a serial killer.
Well, I think that might be a reference to how, kind of like in Mistborn, you have to have like snapped, right?
Sure.
To gain those powers. And in this, we all know the Knights Radiance have to be a little bit broken.
Right.
Which is a soul spiritual realm type of thing. So I think she might be referring to that. I could be wrong.
Completely right.
I'm also going to break in here and say that one of the ways that the Radiants lose Stormlight is because they're porous. And they breathe it out, and they have holes where the Stormlight literally escapes from, because it is, when they breathe, it is breathed out. And so I think the fact that it is both Lifelight and Stormlight mixed together probably, for some reason, makes it more susceptible to that, because we also know it states that it drains faster from gemstones than Stormlight does.
Yep. Yeah,
that's true. That's a good point, Griff.
Yeah, it's a perfectly reasonable limitation on the magic so that people don't go, well, why don't they just carry Tower Light everywhere? It's infinitely renewable. They don't have to wait for a high storm.
Actually, that's an interesting point that I wanted to touch on.
Okay.
Sorry. I find it interesting that both bondsmiths currently have a limited access to an infinitely renewable form of investiture. Because we have Dalinar with Honor's Perpendicularity, which automatically provides the Knights Radiant with Stormlight. And then we have Navani with the tower, where so long as they're at the tower, they have access to an infinite well of tower light.
Yeah. Sure. I like that there's limitations to each of them, too.
Absolutely. Otherwise, it would be a soft magic system there.
I just find it interesting that we're seeing this consistent ability of bondsmiths. And so whoever takes up cultivation, I think we're going to see a similar thing. I don't know what it's going to look like entirely, but I expect we're going to see something similar with cultivation, where limited access to infinite lifelight.
Unless Ba Edo Mishram is the third bondsmith, Spren.
Right. I think if it was the Night Watcher, it would just be cultivation's perpendicularity rather than honors. But yeah, it might be Ba Edo Mishram, which is a theory that gets more and more popular these days.
Yep.
I don't hate it.
I don't hate it either.
But yeah, I think building off of Griff, I think it's cool as well that there's like limitations or consequences with it. If you're Dalinar and you open up the perpendicularity, well, if someone's on the other side waiting to ambush you, you just gave them a doorway. And then Navani, like, oh yeah, you are gonna have a great life. I hope you're okay staying in the tower forever.
Yeah, and not sleeping.
That kind of sucks. Yeah, and not. So if you got any nightmares you're living with, tough nuts.
Yeah. Which
right,
yeah,
tough creme.
Yeah, to me, tower light, like Griff was saying, like it dissipates quicker. It's like a volatile chemical reaction being held under pressure, where Stormlight and Lifelight have mixed.
Right.
And then when it goes into the radiance and leaves the tower, it's the seal is off the can and the gas escapes. Yep. Now for Yasna's part of this chapter.
Oh yes.
Wit does some invested arts.
A lot of them.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Maybe not all of them.
I don't know.
All the ones he has, maybe.
It was something. So
it was a lot of them, at the very least.
It was a lot of power. And I would be hesitant to say exactly what he was doing at any given moment with various powers we know he has. And the reason I say that is like he has so much investiture that he can change his form at least a bit at will, right? So I'm hesitant to say that it would be simple to agree that like pushing on the metal was a result of his allomancy, but I'm also open to the idea that he was pushing out with so much power that the metal reacted in a way that seemed very similar to allomancy, steel pushing.
Yeah.
But it was likely just steel pushing in a way.
I think it was steel pushing.
I think
in the earlier version of this, I think it was pretty similar. There probably no changes at all. But when I first read it, it definitely sounded like steel pushing, all the Mistborn stuff.
Yeah.
Although I do have an interesting
it seems
point,
like one of those moments from like. Go ahead.
No, go on. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, okay. It reads cinematically to me like one of those moments in like a Ghibli movie, like where somebody is channeling so much magic that the wind starts like blowing their hair and all of their clothes behind them. Like that is what I imagine Sanderson was going for, and he used the tools at his disposal, which is allomancy in this case. That's what I was going to say. Very cinematic.
Yeah. I so often forget that Wit.
Two things.
Go ahead, Griff.
Go.
Okay. One, I find it interesting that the sand was affected by whatever Wit was doing, which sounds to me like he might actually have access to sand mastery, however that's granted, which we don't actually know so far. We've seen people access sand mastery and even like unlock sand mastery, but we're still unsure without further info exactly how that's accessed, which we might get info on.
I would imagine autonomy respects Wit because he is such a look out for himself type of guy.
But doesn't she also hate Wit?
Yep.
I don't know. Does she?
But also, sand mastery is granted. Yeah. Sand mastery is granted by somebody who has sand mastery telling you that you're worthy of sand mastery.
I don't know if that's true or not. That sounds familiar, but it also sounds like a joke.
That's what I'll look it up.
I thought they were born with it. Maybelline.
Griff, what was your second point?
Okay, well, first I was going to say we might get more info on that in the prose version of White Sand, which I'm looking forward to. My second point was that something that this struck me as was a lot of Wit's investiture being activated by his stress of realizing that he's missing this time in his memories, because if breath is the only thing he needs to access to find out what memories he has and what memories he doesn't, I could have almost seen this as like his anxiety spiking and his panic getting the better of him and his investiture just kind of coming out that way and affecting the world around him.
I think his emotions are definitely playing a part, and he's just like kind of letting loose a little bit, just letting out some steam.
Yeah, I take it back. They don't know how sand mastery works yet. Like, we don't. I take it back.
Yeah.
I was wrong.
I'm hoping we get more in the prose version, because
I'm sure we will. Well,
I'd be interested.
I was shocked when we got confirmation that he could do sand mastery, not because I'm shocked by Wit having another investiture art, but because there was a scene in Warbreaker, right, where he had like sand, he was telling a story, and I was waiting for it, but it never happened. And supposedly white sand is like the earliest thing in the Cosmere, so you would have imagined that Wit went there.
White sand does chronologically take place before everything.
I'm not convinced that the sand floating in this is sand mastery.
It says that
maybe
the sand turns black and falls to the ground. That is...
Well, like but it turns white in the presence of investiture, and then he just could have taken away the investiture.
Okay.
Well, it has a recharge time.
So here's the thing with white sand, is that in Tildane, that's the planet with the white sand takes place on, right?
Yeah. Yep.
The sunlight literally has investiture in it. So the sand just sitting in the sunlight gets recharged by the investiture in the sunlight. However, to make the sand float when it is already white, you need to spend investiture to manipulate it. And then when you stop accessing that investiture and let it go, the sand turns black and then needs to recharge in the presence of investiture.
Right. So here it was black first.
So him floating the sand tells me that he has access to sand mastery.
Well, so let's go back to exactly what it said. Let's see. He wrote furiously, his handwriting growing sloppy, and he pulled out some of the strange color-changing sand he used when experimenting. His expression grew more intense. The doors began to shake. Yasna had a sword in hand a second later, but then realized it was him. No one was on the other side. He was exerting some kind of pressure that made the doors vibrate. The rings in her jewelry box began to spill out onto the floor, while her shoes scooted away, pushed by their buckles. Every bit of metal in the room, save for her shard blade, reacted to him, including her fabrial alarms, which went haywire, flashing rapidly. Then the sand burst alight with a mother-of-pearl iridescence and hovered above the table. Wit's silky nightclothes began to writhe and contort as if alive. His motions became increasingly frantic. His body changes.
So my guess here is that because he's looking for memories, he's taking a lot of investiture in through breaths or whatever else he might have. And that's what's supplying the sand with that investiture, that burst of investiture. And that's what's turning it to white. And then
I agree, turning it to white is what that does. But the fact that it floats tells me that he has access to sand mastery, because just getting investiture doesn't make the sand float. It turns it white, but the sand actually takes on a mother-of-pearl sheen when it's being controlled by a sandmaster before they let go of it, and then it turns black.
Oh, you're right, yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I guess so.
So somehow he snuck in and stole sand mastery from autonomy.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, somehow he snuck into Tildane.
Maybe that's why she's mad at him.
That could be.
It might be, because she has an avatar on his home planet, which prevents him from going home.
Right.
I don't know that either.
What were you going to say, Trevor?
Oh, I was going to mention earlier how it's funny how I so often forget that Wit has all these abilities, and I really should be paying attention even more closely when he's on page. I want to say on screen, but he's on the page. Because knowing who Wit is, I would imagine the Mistborn art that he uses the most would be emotional manipulation.
Right.
And I kind of want to go back and reread the stories that he tells to Kaladin and Shallan and see like if from their perspective they just feel lighter randomly for some reason. And I would imagine that's the nod to the emotional allomancy, and I just missed it.
Could be,
but he definitely is subtle.
I got to start paying more attention.
His use of all of the investiture arts, like, because even Zyle was more blatant about it when he was using the breath when he was sparring with Kaladin. I want
someone to ask Sanderson. I want someone to ask Sanderson if, or to get the best answer out of him, in each of the investiture arts, which would Hoyd be considered a master in?
Ooh, that is an interesting question.
Because we know he's old.
Right.
But I wonder, like, there may be some random one where it's like, well, actually, he hasn't practiced with this one much, but he's still learning. Or, I would be curious.
I'd be interested to find out if it's an investiture art we haven't encountered yet.
I feel like that's a great question for him to. That's a question if I were him, I would want someone to ask, so I can be like, "Oh yeah, grand apparatus," and then just never mention it again. He just does that random stuff. It's just that's just such a good question. Someone please ask him at Nexus if you're listening.
How about we try to get in and ask that question at this year's Dragonsteel?
I've tried. Another one I want to ask him, since we're on the tangent, is I just want him to confirm that, spoilers for Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, but I want him to confirm that when she like convinces the souls to like change shape into useful things, that's got to be soul casting, right? Or like at least a similar mechanism of it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, probably.
Like it follows all the same rules. It follows all the same rules.
Yeah, it's a similar process at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
Although, interestingly enough, more than Spren, the spirits in Yumi seem to have a process of thought on following the spirit of the request rather than just the letter. Of knowing what Yumi is asking them to turn into, and then following that.
Yeah. It's almost like a combination of soul casting and giving a command, like a very specific. And it kind of reminds me of Shallan the first time she's trying to make a bead turn into fire, right?
Right.
Was that the stick moment? I am a stick.
I am a stick.
So it just reminds me of that. I don't know.
Yeah, no,
I don't think he's confirmed it yet. So I tried to ask it last year, but I couldn't. I didn't get picked.
Oh.
Yeah, poor Trevor.
This year we riot if you don't get picked.
No, I mean, why not we just all put in a question?
Not that big
I'm at least going to, because I like that Hoyd question. That'd be cool. I do want to know. I'd be interested to see if he rathos it.
Yeah. Another question: if anyone's listening and you get a chance, the best question you could ask if you just want something random is give us a spoiler with zero context. Like that, Sanderson would eat that up. He wouldn't raffo you. I feel like he would give you something super niche that he's currently thinking about. It's something we've seen that he has this pattern where when he's writing something and he's thinking about like outlining or writing or just thinking about something, he will answer more of those questions. We saw it with dragons.
That's
and
true.
Then the next year we got the Emberdark announcement. We saw with something else with Roshar, and then Wind and Truth coming out. I can't remember what it was, but there's like a pattern with it.
If he's writing the prose for White Sand soon, then it might be worth asking, how do Sand Mastery people get picked?
Oh, how do they access their sand? Yeah, I'd be interested to know, because autonomy is one of those that we've seen in a villain. We've seen the autonomy in a sort of villainous position in Lost Metal. Lost Metal? Yeah. But we haven't seen a lot of autonomy as just autonomy.
That's because autonomy sucks.
I mean,
no
yeah,
man
I agree.
is an island. No shard is a shard land.
Hey, you be nice to future Kelsier.
Spoilers without
what is it? What's the word? I can't think of it.
Okay. Shall
speculative,
we?
That's the word.
Speculative
Spoiler.
There you
speculative
go.
spoiler.
Yeah.
There you go.
Speculation without spoilers.
Before we move on from this piece, though, I did want to call out that there's a point where Wit changes shape and like his persona, and it's not like Sanderson makes it very clear, like this is not a light weaving. He's like changing his body like Skinwalker style,
right?
And we are left to presume maybe it's something about his heritage, some other form of magic that we just haven't seen yet. I saw a theory that someone's saying maybe this is another example of substantiation, which we saw a couple chapters ago with Shallan. And then there was something else I thought that it might be, but I can't remember. I'll have to check my notes on it. But yeah, so curious what your thoughts on that was.
I think it's just so much investiture that he changes to what he wants to be as Wit, and then in this case he lost his ability to concentrate on that, and so
so you jog my memory. Do you think it's maybe him manipulating his identity, capital I?
Yeah, like spoilers for Yumi. Yes, just like Yumi did when Yumi would change Nikaro's body.
Got it.
Okay,
exactly
theory.
Like that.
Cool.
Crack
He's
theory.
extremely skilled and soul casting himself.
I think it could be. Oh, you said soul casting. Oh man. Interesting.
Because here's the thing. Because doesn't soul casting like include blood and things like that?
I don't think so.
The 10 essences, yeah. Like,
is flesh any of that?
It doesn't be organic. It's. But,
interesting.
I mean,
what are the 10 essences? I forget. It's like oil,
like blood, smoke,
blood. Let's see. I've got it here. It looks like it's air, smoke or fog, an opaque gas. It says fire, quartz, glass or crystal, wood, plants or moss, blood, or all non-oil liquid. And then the next one, all kinds of oil, metal, rock and stone, meat and flesh. Holy cow, wait a minute. 2 of those are some of our theorized old remnants of Adenalgium, right? We have capital W wind, and we've been theorizing for the last few weeks about stone. And those are both on there. Metal is like clearly
I'm going to say
deal.
Because both flesh and blood are among the 10 essences. I don't think it's actually entirely impossible that he's literally soul casting himself a shifted body.
I don't think you're wrong. That's a great theory, Griff. Wow. That kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Yumi thing, but hold on. Wait, can we?
It could be both, honestly. It could be a little bit of both.
It could be.
It's true.
But
again, if we know what he's a master of, he might be able to combine it in some sort of unique way. I don't know.
Okay, but
what are you thinking?
Well, so someone somewhere suggested that, and in our comments on YouTube suggested that, like, what were the unmade from? And there was the wind, and then whatever cultivation brought forward could be related to the wood plant's moss, right? Like,
Are you saying the Night Watcher or something else?
Yeah, the Night Watcher.
Or what became the Night Watcher? Yeah,
what became the Night Watcher. So there could have been 10 of those Godspren, and then Odium unmade 8 of them, or even less of them, and split some of them, and that's why we have 3. So there could be 3 that were unmade, but the whole of it was unmade into one thing, and that's why there's 3 of them that have 3-word names, and those are the most those are the unmade that have the most intelligence, and then the other ones could have been unmade and split from their original. I don't know.
I'm also going to break in here with a complete tangent and say that I find it interesting that not all of the 10 essences, but some of the 10 essences are also reflected in the are they called the Aether? Yeah, the Aetherbound.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I just find that interesting because
he might have an Aether.
Well, because I just specifically the quartz, the air, the plant, and that kind of thing. And I find it interesting because the Aetherbound are specifically said to be separate from Adonalsium. And so to see them kind of roped back into surge binding is kind of interesting. I'm not saying there's anything there necessarily, but I just do find it an interesting juxtaposition.
I'm looking at the heralds that are attached to each, and like most of them make sense. Like air is Yezrian, fire is the Dustbringer one. What's weird is that I feel like these two should be swapped. The quartz glass crystal is attached to the Edge Dancer Herald, forget her name, and the wood plant's moss is attached to the Truth Watcher Herald. And I feel like those should switch because Gliss appears as like.
Yeah, I noticed that a long time ago, and it threw me for a little bit of a loop as well. Because it does seem odd? Like an Edge Dancer should be attached to the plant essence.
Yeah, and then like metal being with the builder of Kellic, because the Will Shapers are like the builders and the creative people, and then rock and stone being with Taln, who's like a very like sturdy person that the order's all about being there when you're needed. Like they're the best fighters, they're solid guys and girls. So like the most of them make sense, but those two just like I feel like they're swapped. I don't know.
Huh.
Then again, I don't know what any any arguments would be for like blood or flesh or oil. I don't know. Anywho, Alex, you wanted to move on to something, and I totally cut you off with the wit stuff. But
I think the next chapter.
Okay.
Yeah. Do we have anything else? As my eyes are glued to this page of the Unmade on the Coppermind.
Yeah, I don't think there was anything about this chapter more that I had to say.
I mean, I just want to say that this is probably my favorite chapter so far. I think the writing is way elevated from day one. I love the little writing technique trick of the this person was not awake. I like that repetition. I think in literature class we called it like anaphora or something like that, when you just like start with the same phrase or word. I have a really random note in here where it's just, I thought it was interesting that we've been seeing them talk about the clothing a lot more in this book, and like Takama in particular. Yeah, I've seen a few times, and I don't remember. Mm-hmm. It's possible I just forgot about it, but I feel like it's been talked about a lot more than normal. So I'm curious if there's a reason for it, or if he's just trying to add a little bit more life to it. I don't know.
I think the frequency is like denser at the beginning of this book, just to remind us of them.
Yeah,
he definitely brings it up in the past books when it's relevant, like the soldiers down in our seas and the Vision are wearing this, or Kaladin was wearing his short skirt like thing with shorts underneath it, which was odd for a captain. And
I think when Dalinar was sticking to the codes more strictly, too, he and Adolin were either wearing it or consider wearing it or something.
Yeah. In this case, they are Chekhov's guns, but not like for anything important. So it's possible that that art of Odium climbing the stairs to meet, of Dalinar climbing the stairs to meet Odium, in the book he's actually wearing the Takama during that. So Sanderson had to put it in here so that we knew that it existed before the end of the book. But that's
interesting.
Just
okay.
I bet he's in his normal leather uniform. Otherwise, why would Michael Whalen have painted him like that?
Yep.
On the cover.
All right. Well, you ready to get hot and steamy again?
I am very ready.
Cool. I will turn my stuff off.
See you in just a moment. Chapter 15. Pain Sprint. Pain Sprint. I might leave that in. Oh boy. Chapter 15. Passion Spren. This family did not speak my language, but we could both write glyphs, which proved facilitative in our conversation. As I shared their kindly cook fire, I learned some of their story from The Way of Kings, 4th Parable. Though Shallan had insisted on going to gather and talk with her Lightweavers, Adolin managed a few hours' sleep. He rose, planning to arrive early for the meeting so he could get updates on current troop placements. Unfortunately, something interrupted his plans. It was called a shower. Water rained down through holes in the ceiling of a small room beside his bedroom. A light behind the stones indicated the level of heat, and if he pressed his hand to it and rotated, he could make the water warmer or colder. A similar dial let him control the pressure and flow. He was a high prince, a shard bearer, and this was the single greatest moment of luxury he'd ever known. Steam filled the room like a Thaylen sauna as warm water melted away his fatigue, his anxiety. Both had seemed solid as stone, but even stone gave way, eventually, before rained water. Storms. He could have stayed in here for hours. He turned up the pressure, letting the water massage his back. How would this feel after a hard training session? He released a huge sigh, drawing not a few joy spren. Storms. There really were a lot more spren in the tower now than before, weren't there? Shallan peeked in, a splash of auburn red against the yellow-brown strata. Her meetings must be done. What is that? She asked, her eyes going wide. Hakendar calls it a shower, Adolin said, naming their room steward. She stared, aqua eyes bright as spheres. I need to try it. She was in there a moment later, looking stunning as she crowded him to the side. Does it have to feel like a high storm? You can adjust the pressure here, he said, pulling his eyes away and showing her. She turned it down, changing the flow from a beating frenzy to a soft sprinkle. Ah, she said, but not hot enough. Are you trying to drive me out? Adolin asked as she turned the heat up to an uncomfortable level. It's like rain, she said, her head tipped back so the water could wash across her face. If rain were warm. Hot. Heat is life. It reminds me that I'm alive. You forget that? Once in a while, she whispered, then leaned on him, wet hair against his chest. You're warm too. Hakendar brought me 6 different soaps, Adolin said, and a rough sand mix from Marat to exfoliate. There's this one soap out of Thalena. They use it on their eyebrows. That is fantastic for hair. She nodded absently, her eyes closed. So he held her, skin against skin, slick and warm. This was perfection. This was what he'd always wanted and had never been able to find until he met her. Not merely skin to skin, soul to soul. He ran his fingers through her wet hair, massaging her scalp, her cheek against his chest. "I love you," he whispered. She grinned back, and he picked her up off the ground a little, surrounded by Joyce-Bren, holding her tight. "I still," Shalon whispered, "I still need to deal with the Ghostbloods. I might have to miss Dalinar's meeting. Will you? Will you tell him and Navani about Mraize and what I've done? I'm not sure I can spare the time." "Of course," Adolin said, impressed by how willing she was to open be open about these issues. And if she didn't want to, perhaps couldn't, explain to Dalinar herself right now, he understood. "I don't blame you for wanting someone to prep my father for you. He can be stern to those who disappoint him." She perhaps sensed the bitterness in his tone, noticed how several Joyce-Bren winked away. It had been a year since Adolin had learned Dalinar killed his mother, and he couldn't let go. As he set Shalon down, she took his face in her hands. "Would it help to talk?" she asked. I don't know, Shalon," he said. "Honestly, I don't want to think about him or talk to him. I don't want to fix things between us. He'd thought waiting would let the pain fade. It had, instead, festered. He found himself more angry than he'd been when he'd first found out. "Another time," he told Shalon. "I promise." "You're really going to miss the meeting? Did you hear about Thaylen City? A second attack. Maybe more. We'll know once the scout reports come in." "You can handle it," she said. "Mraize is here in the tower somewhere, and will move against me soon, so I have to move first. It will help if you'll talk to the bondsmiths, maybe get me authorization for Radiant troops and a preemptive strike if I can find the current Ghostblood nest." He sighed, wrapping his arms around her again. "Is this ever going to end? We met not long before the Everstorm, and married in the middle of a war. I've had enough of wearing uniforms every day, watching cities fall, feeling that I need to hold on tight every time I have you in my arms, as I don't know when the next chance will be." "I know," she whispered, head to his chest once more. "I want to kiss you until you can't breathe and spend a week never leaving our rooms. But we can't. Not yet. Mraize will try to hurt me, love. Prove that I was foolish to cross him. To get to me, he'll capture or kill you if he can. I have to act before he does." He met her eyes, as best he could, with both of them blinking away water. She reached up to push a cascade of soaked red hair out of her face. It might not have been the best place for a meaningful stare, but neither of them moved, and the Joyce-Bren were soon joined by Passion-Spren, like snowflakes, but more crystalline. "Thank you," he said. "For understanding?" "For trusting me to understand," he said. "I've never begrudged you your secrets, Shalon, but now that you're sharing them, I find them precious." She cocked her head. "I have shared them, haven't I? You know it all. All about Mraize, the Ghostbloods, Formless." She gripped his arms tight, pressing her entire self against him, and grinned, water dripping from her nose. "You know it all, and you don't hate me, right?" "Of course I don't." "It's almost kind of all right," she said. "It can, maybe, possibly work out. If I stop Mraize. I don't know why he wants to find the prison of the most powerful unmade, but—" Adolin nodded. "I'll represent you at the meeting." She moved to slip away without even conditioning her hair. He pulled her back. Not for the hair, though. "Surely we have a few minutes," he said, "before running to the next crisis? I mean, Haven't you always wondered what it would be like out in the rain? She paused, holding his hand. Drat, she said. What? I was trying very hard to stay focused, Adolin Colin, she said, and pretend you aren't the most gorgeous statue of a man to ever grace the world. Even when he's wet? He said. Especially when he's wet, love. She stepped back to him, went up on her toes, and kissed him, water falling around them like applause. The heat he'd been fighting off rose within him, outdoing that of the stream from above, and the passion spread fell more powerfully. It seemed that whether or not she had time to spare, they were going to find it. Dalinar stomped through the corridors of Urithiru, throwing on his coat. He was joined by Kolat, second in command of the Cobalt Guard. The tall, light-eyed man had little tufts of red hair mixed through his black, dark enough that they were visible only in direct light. Dalinar didn't need guards these days, but he said nothing as the man followed. Kolat had been bouncing between positions for a few years, and the last thing he needed was to feel useless or rejected. Again. Kellen, the Windrunner squire who had come to fetch Dalinar, hovered along beside the two of them. It had been merely 3 days since Navani had re-energized the tower, and the Windrunners already appeared perfectly comfortable flying all the time. Even at this time of night, Urithiru was usually active, but today the main thoroughfare was less congested than normal. The invasion and the curfews had a lingering effect. People were still traumatized, hiding in their rooms, recovering from the stress. Dalinar stormed forward, keeping momentum, as had always been his way. People who spotted him would yelp and jump back, but mostly he ignored everyone. As they neared the atrium, where they'd be able to travel to the meeting chambers at the top of the tower, Windrunner Sigzil came streaking through the corridor and landed nearby. I have the initial scout reports, sir. And? You are right, sir, Sigzil said, holding up a stack of papers as they walked. It's not just Azamir and Thaylen City. There's a third offensive. A large number of fused are marching on the Shattered Plains. Damnation! 2 was bad enough, particularly when one was Thaylen City, which had barely recovered from the Battle of Thaylen Field a year ago. It didn't have much of a defensive force remaining, and what few ships the Royal Navy maintained had been dedicated to the Vaden blockade. He'd need to send Fen support. A great deal of it. What do we know about the fused? Dalinar asked. We sent 2 Windrunners, Sigzil said, who were stationed at a scout post in the Frostlands. Sir, they estimate almost 1,000 fused, and at least 1 Thunderclast is with them, if not both. Storms, Dalinar said. 1,000 fused? He'd never faced a battle with more than 200. There weren't that many Radiants in all Roshar. Not by half. Why the Shattered Plains? Did they get wind of Yasna's plan to found a second Alethi kingdom there? The Windrunners didn't have answers for him, though it did make sense to send fused. Odium couldn't get many troops to the Shattered Plains before the deadline, so he'd have to rely on quality rather than quantity. Plus, fused moved far faster than conventional troops, especially if they had Heavenly Ones to fly them part of the distance. A 3-way assault? Kellen said, hovering to his left. Striking at our 3 most powerful strongholds other than Urithiru. Assuming, Sigzil said, they aren't planning to strike here as well. The sibling is confident, Dalinar said, that no fused would dare set foot here now, and that regal powers won't work. They'd have to use conventional troops, which would be massacred by our Radiants. But this did seem to be a message. Strikes on Dalinar's coalition, Azamir, Thaylen City, and the Shattered Plains, which was becoming Alethkar in exile. Once the contest arrived in 8 days, the borders would freeze, and while the enemy could probably capture more land by pushing at the borders, this was more intimidating. It warned that Odium could cut out the very hearts of his enemies if he wanted. Well, let him try. They reached the atrium and stepped out onto a balcony overlooking the central hub below. A large window ran up the length of the far wall, stretching 100 stories into the sky, showing darkness outside. Just in case, Dalinar said, wake every soldier. Send patrols to scan the nearby mountains and into Shadesmar here. Post quadruple guard forces at any possible incursion point into Urathiru, including the Oathgates and the caverns. Any news on the other monarchs? They're confirmed for your meeting, sir, Sigil said, holding up the papers. Teshov asked me to deliver these. Letters from Aesir and Thalena. Both sound quite alarmed, but agree that meeting is wise. Dalinar had given him authority, as leader of the Windrunners, to read letters like this. It was wonderful to have another man around who didn't feel embarrassed to be seen reading. In the past, Sigil had always been coy about his training in Aesir, and whether it included the ability to read Alethi scripts. In the face of Dalinar's decisions, his need for subterfuge had evaporated. Has anyone seen Wit? Dalinar asked. There, Sigil said, pointing toward one of the lifts already rising to the upper floors. I spotted him and the Queen on their way. Good, Dalinar said, holding out his hand. If you'll give me a lashing, I might beat them there. Then... He trailed off as he noticed someone approaching down the hallway. The nursemaid, carrying little Gavinor, dressed in his schoolchild's outfit of knee-length trousers and a blouse. Merarin, Dalinar said to her, is something wrong? I'm taking him up to the garden room, Merarin said. It comforts him, Bright Lord. I apologize. I didn't expect to encounter you. It's the middle of the night. Gav buried his face in her hava, but peeked at Dalinar. The boy's eyes were red from tears. Nightmares? Dalinar asked Merarin. She nodded. The woman could be stern, but she cared deeply for the children she watched over. Grandpa, Gav whispered, yawning, you promised to play swords with me. You need sleep, Gav, Dalinar said softly, stepping toward him. And Grandpa has important work today. We will play tomorrow. Gavinor nodded, rubbing his eyes on Merarin's dress. Get him something to eat, Dalinar said, then bring him up to the tower top. Maybe after my meeting I can... Dalinar Kholin? A voice asked. He spun, but found that Kolat the guardsman had already stepped between him and the speaker. She was a shorter woman, Makabaki, in brown clothing, black hair in tight curls, heavy-set build, dark brown eyes that shimmered with something he couldn't define. Do I know you? Dalinar asked. We've met, she said, then turned and walked along the balcony railing. She waved for him to follow. You give orders to the king of Urathiru? Kolat said. What manner of... Stay back, Dalinar said, waving to them all. Then he ran to catch up to the woman. Her air, attitude, and looks dredged up deep memories, ones he'd once forgotten by her own hand. No, it couldn't be. Could it? Cultivation. The third god. The end of chapter 15.
Ooh, snap. It's getting real.
It's getting so real. So real.
So I apologize to all of the Gavinor theory followers. You gained some points this week, okay?
A few points, and they were almost certainly a play on the fact that people think it's going to be Gavinor.
Sanderson is just such a tease, man.
He's a tease. That's true. So
good.
We get the red eyes and playing swords with Dalinar, and on the tower top, or Dalinar suggests they should go to the tower top. He's just messing with us. Yeah, the nightmares could legitimately be Odium tormenting the kid.
Yeah,
which is horrifying.
Yeah,
I don't know if Terravodium is doing that same thing. Honestly, I would.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know if he would, but he might. We don't know. Cultivation seems very tropish for Mother of the Earth thing going on.
Hey, we've been talking about her meddling and how it seems like, she's touched 3 people. She's manipulated 3 people, and those 3 people are perfectly primed to take up a shard, one of which who has already done so. There's been a lot of teasing and a lot of foreshadowing and setting up for Dalinar taking up Honor.
Yep.
And now that Taravangian seems to not be going in the path that Cultivation hoped, I'm getting the feeling that she's calling in reinforcements, and we're going to be getting finally some info on Honor, the Shard, and Dalinar will be set up even more so to take it up. Whether that happens or not remains to be seen and theorized. But again, it could be Sanderson teasing us again, even more.
That's a good theory.
But that's where it looks like it's headed to me.
I like it. The part in here with Adolin and Shallan, like we said, very steamy. This is really making it feel like it's setting it up for something to go haywire.
I knew you were going to go there.
Like it could now he could subvert, right? Because spoilers for all Cosmere.
We've been past that the whole time.
I know, but I just for specific, like the Lost Metal starts with Wayne, and then from that, I personally, and I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, Wayne's gonna die at the end of the book."
Yep. Yeah.
So now he could be taking that same promise and subverting it, and Adolin and Shallan are going to be fine. I don't think so, but it could happen.
Yeah, I think something that he could do that would still hurt, but not I'm killing one of your favorite characters hurt, is they might break up or have a break, not the up, but just the break of like, I'm going to go explore the Cosmere while you stay and lead.
It could be that.
I could see that. I could legitimately see that happening, and that would still hurt.
Yep.
Almost as much as like Sigil leaving and, whatever happens to Kaladin, right?
Yeah. And then also in Adolin and Shallan's chapter, it's heavily foreshadowed that Mraize is going to come after Adolin in some way. And if we remember from the back of the book, Adolin is the only named character that's going to be in Azamir.
And Azir,
fighting. Yeah. So when I was reading that, I was like, oh, it would be such a great moment of chaos for Sanderson to say, okay, here's Mraize's agents. They are here for Adolin right when he's trying to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's going to be...
Oh, that's really good. That's a lot to throw at him. That really tests him.
Because, this book is the culmination of the first act. Everybody's going to get beaten down left, right, center. And it's something...
So
Go ahead.
We've been thinking about maybe Adolin going to the Valley of the Night Watcher,
right?
Because a mule is safe haven for us good guys. What if the Night Watcher comes to him in that scenario?
It could be, yeah.
I don't know how tied down it is to that area, right? But that's kind of where my mind went when you were saying that.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Because if he's just chaos after chaos, like he's put up against a corner, right? And the Night Watcher comes and saves them. And maybe it's a story beat that's been played out too many times. We don't want to see that again, but
that would be...
I wouldn't mind it.
Yeah.
If it saves Adolin, I'm okay with it.
There would have to be some really heavy duty promises being made in this day and the third day for that to make sense. Like,
yeah,
it would need to be like he gets to Azamir and immediately feels something is different with Maya, and then through that, it's being foreshadowed that
that's good. I forgot about Maya being a cultivation strand. That might give him. That might be a point towards the bondsmith.
It could be
more than the edge dancer.
Yeah, yeah. Because
I just didn't put 2 and 2 together on that.
Because if if their bond, whatever it is, strengthens enough, she might be able to start talking to him when she's a Shardblade, kind of like Ox was able to talk to Nomad in Sunlit Man. And then she could be like, she could see it from Shadesmar better than Adolin could see it in the real world.
Yeah.
Something coming. Anyway.
I don't like the idea of Adolin becoming an edge dancer. I don't think he fits that order. I know Sanderson has said that any character could fit in any order. I don't buy that. I just don't think that his values line up with that one.
Yeah.
So that could be another great subversion. It's like, oh, he's not an edge dancer. It's actually Night Watcher.
Yeah.
But he's gonna have to be saved in some magical way, I would imagine, this book. It doesn't mean he needs to stay saved, but I am expecting that. That is on my bucket list. I feel like he's set expectations for that.
Yeah.
But especially with these chapters, like you've been saying, like this is a little bit too much calm for the storm. Like if it's this calm, the storm's going to be even heavier.
Right.
So I don't know.
There's also a possibility that we see him with some of the characters he's like bonded with to a lower level, like Drahe and some of the Windrunners, and like what could instead happen is that Adolin changes due to like major deaths, and like, or he could change and Bondsmith. He could like his personality being the bubbly good boy golden retriever could shift to I now see the reality of life and it is pain, and I have to try my hardest to save what people I can. They go to a mule, and then something there. I don't know. There's a lot of speculation.
He bonds the wind, and he's the author confirmed.
Boom.
Boom. Nailed it.
We got it.
But to piggyback off your point one last time, I do wonder if maybe we get some setup in the next. Maybe it's the next chapter. Maybe there's another chapter or two that we have to wait for that conversation with Daddy Dalinar and Cultivation. But maybe there are some nuggets foreshadowed there. I don't know. We'll definitely have our eyes peeled for that.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's got to happen within day 2, so hopefully we'll get it before.
Oh, like, yeah. I could see him like, all right, we're going to go to Kaladin and Zeth now or something. I don't know.
Because it is.
Yeah.
Let's see. It is. Forgive
we're
me.
At chapter 14, 15.
Yeah. Adolin. Did we didn't get a Shallan POV, so we're probably going to get Shallan next. And then I expect.
Oh, was this one Adolin?
Yeah, this one was Adolin.
Okay.
So, I bet we'll bounce between Shallan, Dalinar, Zeth, Sigzil, Kaladin. Yeah, I bet Dalinar will get 1 or 2 chapters, unless there's a possibility that.
I think you're right. I think Dalinar is the through line of this day because it's like the coalition and like battle strategy, preparing and stuff like that.
But
like,
we still get to see Sigzil. We get a POV from Sigzil, and Sanderson has been known to change the interest POV so that it's more interesting. And so instead of Dalinar telling us everything that Cultivation tells him, what we're going to see is that conversation, but only from the point of view of Sigzil. So we're only going to get what Dalinar is willing to say, which means that there's going to be a big reveal about what Honor is going to be at the end.
I would expect it's just Dalinar and Cultivation, but
it'll be just Dalinar and Cultivation, and Dalinar will come back and say,
okay.
This is what Cultivation told me.
I hope not. I want to see what Cultivation has to say.
Well, we will see
in her own words.
Day 10. We'll see it on day 10.
Oh God. Okay.
We're gonna. It's like you'll notice as you're reading the Dresden Files, the first like 7 or 9.
This guy's got me on this series, and there's like 30 books in it.
There's 17. The first like 7 to 9 books. Wait.
As you know, I just picked up books 6 and 7.
The first 11 books, most of the time, before the climax of the story, Dresden will say to his compatriots, I have a plan. And the reader doesn't know what the plan is. And then they'll go into the climax. And it got Butcher used it, way overused it, and he changed it after 12. But that was
super random, but my favorite thing from the series and was from the first 2 books where he would make 2 like random potions and then just like waiting for him to use them in the right time.
Yep.
I don't know why, but I just really like that. I like him like interacting with Bob and like finding out what like it takes to make a potion and like what the potion ends up being and stuff. But then he stopped doing it after like book 3 and 4. I think it lacked one.
It's very similar to how Sanderson would take a lot of care to explain what non and what Dawn characters were in, like even small side characters in books 1 and 2, and then in Oathbringer and later he stopped doing that.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Like the 10 essences, like that stuff, like there's all those things from earlier on that I just totally forgot about, and him mention them again here in this book is like, oh, that nostalgia.
It is, yeah. And then
so yeah, okay. So after book 11 you're saying?
Yeah. You essentially you still get a blank spot where the reader doesn't get to know what Harry is planning, and then Harry puts it into action for it's still very entertaining, especially because
I'm excited. I can't binge any series. I think the only series I've binged was Mistborn.
Oh really?
I actually like, I'm thinking about it, I'm like, is there anything else I've binged, like read in a row? I think it was just Mistborn Era 1, maybe Era 2. Yeah, just Mistborn I just read in a row for whatever reason. I think because Lost Metal was coming out, I needed to catch up.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I don't binge. I hop around nonstop, which isn't good for me because I have a really bad memory. but I like the process of learning a world and like being just absorbed in that world building. And so because I have a bad memory, like my wife makes fun of me all the time. Like if I watch a movie and I wait a year, I'm rewatching the movie for the first time again. Like
that's funny.
It's just like super memorable. So like going back years later to like the next A Song of Ice and Fire book I have to read, like I have to kind of relearn the magic or the world and the politics and stuff. And I love that. So that's probably a self or subconscious reason that I do that. But
there you go.
Anyways, back to this. We have confirmation that there's now a third force, front, whatever you want to call it.
That's right.
I'm starting to wonder, like, are we going to get like 9 and like they're each led by like a different order of the fused? That'd be kind of cool.
I don't think
it'll be 9, but that'd be kind of interesting.
We got, well, I mean, the back of the book mentions Yasna goes to Thaylen City, Adolin goes to Azamir, Sigil, Venli,
Shattered
Plains.
Yeah, okay.
And then Dalinar, Navani
are at the tower doing something.
Go into the spiritual realm to try to learn. And then Shallan, R'hllane, and Renarin also spiritual realm shenanigans, and Kaladin and Zeth off away from everybody on the buddy cop adventure.
It's just like Stranger Things, you know. You got everyone going on their own. Like,
yep.
I mean, he does this all the time, but like, it feels even more amplified. This book.
It does. And it's gonna hit us really fast.
Yeah, I'm digging it, man. I mean, it's almost going too fast as it is now.
It's gonna be one long Sanderlanche. That's the whole thing.
Oh man, it starts on day 3.
Yeah.
No.
Pretty much.
Was there anything else? Kind of. I mean, obviously, cultivation was like the huge. Oh my god! But was there anything else in this one?
Oh my god, that's funny.
What?
You said cultivation. Oh my god.
Yeah.
The Gavinor theory was funny.
Yeah.
Nope, that pretty much.
Shallan and Adolin need to talk to Dalinar about her leading a team, right?
Yep.
So that's going to be interesting because Dalinar and Adolin are kind of. I mean, it's almost like a Cold War. It feels like they're like it feels like they're both mad at each other for the same reason, and they're being butts about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of character growth availability here.
Yeah, right? It's just been this like stewing pot the last book and a half.
Yeah,
pretty much ever since Dalinar wrote Oathbringer, and yeah, I mean, Adolin has been mad about his mom for the right reasons, but
yeah,
Daddy Dalinar, just say you're sorry.
Do you think
own up to it?
Do you think Adolin will not? He's not going to forgive his father to his face, but like he's going to work that into one of his bondsmith bonds. Like Adolin is going to swear the first ideal, and then he'll immediately swear something about
Dude, I would love it.
growing past pain.
Or growing past. I will forgive.
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, I'm not going to come up with like a super poetic one, but forgive and forget. Like, I will make keep the chains intact rather than break them, right?
Yeah, because I mean, Adolin has
build bridges.
Adolin has been cultivating Kaladin and Shallan, bringing them to a better place because he is better.
Yeah, Adolin works as so many different orders, and I've made some videos on TikTok if you guys want to go down the rabbit hole with me. But Adolin fits in so many orders that logically, obviously, the best one would be the bondsmith because they're all about those bonds and like they can relate to anything and anybody. And I mean, that's just kind of their role. That's their job is to understand. They're the quarterback. They need to understand each role very well. And Adolin I feel like he would just excel in that role as long as he lives.
I was just about to
say. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, as long as he lives or as he dies, Navani and Dalinar see his soul because they're connected to him and they're in the spiritual realm. And so they see, they get to see his soul.
They make him a cognitive shadow with connection.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
That'd be
and then he hates
wild.
Them. He hates them for doing that. He'd rather have moved on. And then
so he becomes a fused.
He becomes a fused. He turns into Kelsier, but for Roshar. He starts pulling.
Oh my god! Mistborn is just Adolin's backstory.
Or there you go.
Future.
Yeah, Adolin goes back in time through the spiritual realm.
Yes.
To Mistborn Era 1, he is Kelsier.
Adolin is the wind. Confirmed.
Confirmed.
We need a confirmed button. Confirmed.
Right? I used to have an Odium Reigns button, but I don't know where it went.
I've been saying this since Rhythm of War, but I think like it might be too cheesy, but it'd be like, I mean, I would be bawling the whole time and just so giddy if like Adolin, like at the nick of time, becomes like a bondsmith or a stoneward or something, right? Or a Dustbringer, and he just like, we don't even need to see the ideals, but he just speeds runs the odes.
Yes.
like he's like, he's not even broken. He's just like, no, I totally get it. Like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, and just like it wouldn't make sense with the world that Sanderson has created here, and like the whole purpose of the odes. But man, I would eat that up just because it's Adolin. And
these words are those words too are would you stop swearing the ideals?
You gotta make a comic of that. That'd be funny.
That'd be so funny.
But I love Adolin. My wife calls me her golden retriever. So like I connect to Adolin for so many reasons. I love him.
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, in reality, I'm the Lopin, but
sure.
I strive to be Adolin. Yeah.
Yeah. What are the let's talk about the chapter headings.
The headings.
And
the first one I remember being kind of weird.
Yep.
Oh, I had them up on my other computer. Let me refresh this. The first one was like nurturing or something. I can't remember. Like loving was the trait or something.
Yeah, it was like loving, healing, and
was it the Edge Dancer one?
Yeah, the Edge Dancer one,
which is interesting because Adolin's there. Okay, so the first one. Oh, the first one has 2. Okay, so we got 4 slots. 2 of them are Vedal, the patron of the Edge Dancers, and the other one is the Joker or the Wild Card, which is usually attributed to Wit. And Wit is in that chapter, and Wit has the biggest moments and like probably the biggest piece of that chapter, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, Vidal, the Edge Dancers, her attributes are loving and healing, and her role is healer.
I feel like...
yeah, what's your theory on that?
Right, because I know that the read-along person was like, what? Which that could
I
be a
kind of
red
like their
herring.
stretch.
What was their... Remind me what their stretch was?
It says Yanagon is closely aligned with Lift, an Edge Dancer, but that's a bit of a reach.
So
I kind of like it, but what's your theory?
It's a fine stretch. I personally think like this is the moment. It's chapter 1 of day 2. This is the moment where we see that the coalition that Dalinar has made, all of it, is getting its first mesh. Like, yeah, they went and protected Thaylen City when Thaylen was under attack. But like now we have Azamir and we have the Shattered Plains, and so like coming
this is
together,
the first stress test.
Yeah, coming together as a healing, like, even the wounds that Dalinar inflicted by being the Blackthorn, and that the Alethi afflicted by being war mongering, are now healed for these characters specifically. Dalinar, Yasna, Yanagon, Fen, Navani. So that's where I'm... same thing with loving. Like, they realize everybody's under attack. We need to help each other. And that is a form of love. So
I don't hate that theory at all. I think that's a great poetic interpretation of that. I also was thinking maybe it's because there's a lot of relationships in this chapter.
There's a lot of... I was just about to say something similar. Like, it's
Wit and Yasna. We have Dalinar and Navani's POV. Fen was like being pretty
risque, with
flirtatious and scandalous.
Straight up. And then Yanagon's relationship with close to Lift. Yanagon's relationship with his subjects, like they have like it's a weird infatuation.
Yeah,
I think
we should also start looking at like the essences and stuff now, because I wonder like if there's anything else in that. I thought of it earlier and forgot to mention it, but what was her name again? Vidal. Which one is she?
Vev.
It just has their pictures up. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, you're good. She's number 4. She's
like Vev. a hooded one. Okay, quartz, glass, and crystal. Yeah, the body focus is the eyes.
So a lot of people are seeing things for the first time right now. Like their eyes are being opened to the fact that they're under attack. I mean, there's a lot of ways we could stretch this.
There's so many ways, yeah. I mean, how do you make glass? You make it out of sand?
There was sand.
There was sand.
Confirmed. How do you make quartz? You put minerals under pressure, and Wit was under pressure. They're all under pressure. Pushing down on me, pushing down on you, no man asked for.
Okay, the next one, Passion Spin, chapter 15, is interestingly 4 slots. 4 slots filled by the same one, Vidal.
Beat data. Sorry, I'm gonna stop. I promise.
Oh my god, stop. You're like Sanderson's bird, dude. Yeah, so it's Vidal again for chapter 15. And the read-along guy says, perhaps this is due to Adolin being the primary POV character, as Adolin has always seemed to align more with the Edge Dancers. Bro, reread the series. I'm sorry. Nope. Nope. He is a classic Stone Ward, and you know it. He's actually a little bit of everything. Like Will Shaper, because he loves to style, and he's all about the fashion and like that stuff. And he also wants to like set out his own path away from his father. That was like his whole character arc in Rhythm of War.
Okay.
Stoneward, he is always there when he's needed the most. He's the best friend that we've seen in the entire series to Kaladin, Shallan, everybody. He's always there, ready to heal them, which I know is an Edge Dancer thing, but like he's always there. He's your Ron, you know.
Yeah.
I'm like forgetting all the others. I mean, Windrunner, he protects people. He wants to do what is right, which is like a Skybreaker thing. I don't know. You can go on and on. You can make him fit into anything, but I feel like Will Shaper, Stoneward, and Bondsmith just make the most sense.
Yeah.
I've seen reasons for Dustbringer. We just don't know enough about it yet, so I can't really speak on it.
Sure. Yeah, I feel like Vadel in the chapter headings of this one is there because of Adolin and Shallan's love, and then Dalinar's love for Gavinor, Dalinar's like non-romantic love of how Sigzil is also a man who writes or reads. And then Cultivation shows up. So
yeah, that's exactly what they say as well.
It's Griff.
Sorry,
hey, he's back.
I had a little bit of technical difficulties.
That's all right. We're here. We were just singing "Under Pressure" by David Bowie and Queen. Did you know, Trevor? I don't know your.
I know Trevor.
Yeah. But also, did you know? I don't know how much of a fan you are of My Chemical Romance or The Used.
Oh, I mean, I love some of their hits. I don't listen to the whole album or anything.
For My Chemical Romance, and what about The Used?
I haven't heard of The Used.
Oh, okay. Well, they've got a pretty similar vibe. I really enjoyed the Black Parade album and a lot of The Used.
Yeah, Black Parade is just solid.
The Used's second to the latest album is actually all of the song titles are all of the song names are book titles.
That's sick.
It is really fun. Like Paradise Lost, a poem by John Milton, is the title of the first song. The books are poems, I guess. Anyways, they put out in 2010, they did a concert in Mexico, The Used and My Chemical Romance, and the two lead singers came out and did Under Pressure. And it was a really good rendition of it.
That sounds good. You should send that to me.
I will attempt to. Okay.
Do you guys want to finish with favorite moments or anything else?
Briefly touch on the epigraphs, which is just a parable from The Way of Kings that we're not sure how it relates yet so far to what's happening.
What do we have so far for this parable?
What do
we know?
We know that it is from The Way of Kings, so it's Noadon speaking. As I approached the first crossroad,
I see them here, yeah.
I met a family seeking a new life. This family did not speak my language, but we could both write glyphs, which proved facilitative in our conversation. As I shared their kindly cookfire, I learned some of their story. I imagine.
So we don't know who this is yet, right?
No, other than The Way of Kings is Noadon's story, right?
Right.
So
it could be him reciting someone else's story, but
it could be
probably his.
And it's these first two are probably setting us up for the next 8 to be the family story. And Noadon's comments on that story. That's just my guess.
The next 8 to be the family story. What?
Like the next 8 chapters or so, however many chapters are in day 2. All of the next epigraphs for this are just going to be the family story.
Yeah. I would imagine so.
Yeah.
I mean, usually each epigraph series is a serialization or continuation of something.
Yeah.
So
he goes and he writes.
He
writes it and then he cuts it. He cuts it up for the chapters. So
yeah, exactly. So
except for
we'll see what it is.
But yeah, favorite moments. You were saying, Trevor?
Yeah. Do you want to kick it off, or you want me to start?
Let's have Griff go. That's not silly. Oh, okay. That's fun. What about you, Trevor? What's your favorite moment or favorite moments?
I'm teetering on a few. I think the ending, just Cultivation Show, and that was just such a huge. Oh my god.
That was a good one.
But I feel like that's a cop out. What's yours?
I think it's got to be the soldier dropping the spheres when he sees Queen Fen and Kamakal have been getting busy in the hammock. And he's like, sorry. That was funny.
Yeah,
but
that was
also
hilarious.
Also Gavinor and Sanderson's nod towards that theory. I think that was hilarious.
Sicko. Yeah.
All right.
It's great start to day 2.
It is. It's a very early start to day 2. Are we going to get 24-hour days? Or sorry, 20-hour days? I bet we are. All right. Yeah. Well, cool. Without much further ado, life before death, strength before weakness.
I got nothing.
Oh, come on, man.
Give me a line or give me a minute. Try it again.
Okay. You got something? Or do you need
I was just saying we'll try it again. Yeah, I need something.
Okay.
What's a funny one for this one?
Showing realistic relationships. I don't know, something with that. Not understanding chapter headings. Under pressure.
Under pressure. That'll be a good one.
Okay.
What's the next line for that? Under pressure.
Pushing down on you. Pushing down on me. No one asked for. Under pressure.
Under pressure before crystal or diamond. Before destination.
Remembering the 10 instances before destination.
Let's do it.
Okay.
I'll do one of those.
Okay.
Whatever comes to my mind on those.
Okay. Life before death, strength before weakness.
Under pressure before diamonds, before destination.
That works.